everyone, this is Rachel. Thanks for clicking on my video. And I came in today to talk about Monique versus Tiffany Haddish. There is a story out today on Straight from the A that made me want to revisit this Monique story versus Netflix again. And I'm entitling my video Seasons of Success. Now, let me just explain what's going on. Everyone knows that in the last week or so, Monique came out explaining that Netflix only offered her a $500,000 for a comedy special. She talked about the salaries that Chris Rock got and Amy Schumer and Dave Chappelle, and how her salary paled in comparison to what they got. Now, I did a video concerning this. And in my video, I talked about a few things, concerning Monique and, what I felt was going on. And I wanted to go back and talk about it a little bit more, especially with the news of what Tiffany Haddish got. Now, in my last video, I talked about how I believe that Monique needs new management. Now, she has her husband, Sydney, as her manager. And I don't think that he's doing a good job managing Monique. I know that that's her husband and that she has a lot of faith in him. But sometimes when it comes to your career, you need outside management. A lot of times when you have your partner, your husband, your boyfriend, or whoever managing you, they're too close to the situation. And you may need someone outside who is more experienced, who has greater contacts, and who's serving you better. And I think that that's the main problem with Monique's career. Also, I think after Monique won the Oscar for Precious, Monique expected the offers to pour in. Monique expected the work to come to her. And I believe that during that time, Monique was on fire. And Monique should have struck while the fire was hot. Instead of waiting for the offers to come to her, Monique should have went out and kicked ass and kicked down doors because she was an Oscar winning performer. She was an Oscar winning comedian. I also think that during that time, Monique should have just saturated her career with everything that was coming her way to get her face out there, to get her brand out there, and not focus so much on what she was getting. You got to think about it, y'all. We have had great comedians in the past: Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Eddie Murphy, and the list goes on. And if you think about these legendary comedians and think about some of the things that they've done, some of the work that they took, think of some of Eddie Murphy's earlier movies where we don't even remember them because they weren't that good. Eddie Murphy was taking the work that was offered to him to stay out there, to stay relevant. Think about Richard Pryor. After Richard Pryor had, you know, gone through the whole thing about him being burned and us hearing about him being on drugs, and he had to make a comeback in his career and do things that he probably didn't want to do, but he knew that he had to do it for the sake of his career. And I think that with Monique, this might be the problem. When she got that Oscar, I believe Monique got a bit of a big head, and she believed that she commanded a certain, script, a certain amount of work, a certain type of work. And when anything less than that came, she refused to take those roles, which I think was a mistake on her part because she should have struck while the fire was hot. I also believe that when it comes to being a performer and entertainer, that they have a season. And what I mean by that is, think about some of the legendary singers like Gladys Knight, Diana Ross, all of those type of people. When they were hot, they were hitting everything. They were taking songs that they probably didn't want to sing, but they did it for the sake of their careers. And think about now, when you have like a Gladys Knight or Diana Ross or some of even though the 70s singers that we know can still sing, like the OJs, the Dramatics, and all of them. We know they can still sing, but they don't command the checks that they used to when they were in their season. And I think that that is also something that has happened with Monique. I believe that her season may have passed, and she didn't, in my opinion, strike while the fire was hot. I think that once Monique got with this husband of hers, Monique and him got together and they were doing a lot of talking. And I believe that he was putting ideas in Monique's head that maybe she had a little bit, but it wasn't so where she's saying, I'm not going to take this, I'm not going to take that. And also striking out at the industry. You know, you're not going to get ahead if you're publicly shaming the very people that you're asking to give you quality work. You're not going to get ahead. They're going to pass you by for someone who they feel is easier to work with. Now, there were rumors in the past that Monique was kind of difficult to work with. You know, let's not sugarcoat it. There were those rumors out here. You don't want to get that type of reputation because people will not want to work with you. They will move on to that next comedian that they feel better serves them. Now, also too, I think one thing that Monique needs to stop doing is comparing her check to someone else's check. I understand what Monique is saying, and I also agree with her that she deserves more than $500,000. I said in my last video that they could at least offer Monique 1, 2 million, somewhere like that, even $5 million. If they didn't feel that she would command the following or the audience that a Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock or Amy Schumer, give her something that talk speaks to that Oscar that she got. Now we know Wanda Sykes stepped in and said, "Hey, look, I got a deal from Netflix also, and where they offer Monique $500,000, they only offered me $250,000. So there is a disparity in what, first of all, women make as opposed to men in the industry, and also what women of color, namely black women, make in the industry. So Monique does have a point there. That black entertainers sometimes are not paid the equivalent to what a white entertainer is getting. Also, a lot of people talked about Monique's attitude towards this. A lot of people said, then pick yourself up, push ahead, take the work, do the work, and success will come. I believe that sometimes you need to buckle down and not be so hung up on what someone else's coins are. Get your own coins up. And I think that that was a big problem for Monique. In her head, she knew what she was bringing to the table, and she felt that she wasn't getting paid adequately. I'm pretty sure if we look at, say, a Richard Pryor, a Red Fox, some of the comedians back in the day, they would have the same complaints, the same gripes that Monique had. But they didn't kick themselves in the ass with attacking the industry. And I think that was a big problem. When you're going around, as some people would say, biting the hand that feeds you, meaning the very people that she was putting down were the people that she was asking for a job, quality work. And I think that for Monique, that was a big problem. Now, Straight from the A did a story today, and they were talking about, Monique versus Tiffany Haddish. And the big news is that Tiffany Haddish got a deal with HBO, and it's for 2 years. And they were kind of, blasting Monique like, girl, bye, bye, Felicia. You talking all this shit, and look what just happened to Tiffany Haddish. Now, honestly, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that you can compare one comedian to another. And also, quite frankly, I think Monique is funnier than Tiffany Haddish. But there's something that I've been seeing here on YouTube and all over social media, and it's talking about crossover power. Tiffany Haddish, when she did that movie, Girls, what was the movie? Girls Trip. It crossed over. And what I see with Monique is very, very popular in the Black community. But Monique has not had several projects that crossed over. And let's face it, y'all, as much as we don't want to admit it, that is the way that you become successful. That is the way that you command those bigger salaries. Let's take Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy. Think about their bodies of work. Richard Pryor, even though, his his comedy was rooted in a lot of stuff that we as Black people understand, and maybe people outside of our community don't quite get it, but he had that crossover appeal. Everyone loved Richard Pryor. He is a legend. Same with Eddie Murphy. They had crossover power. And as much as we don't want to face that reality, we don't hold such a percentage of American people. In other words, I believe that African Americans may be 30 something percent of the American population. And you guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong. In other words, we're not the majority. So if we only hold, say, 30 to 40%, let's say 40% of the American population, then the other 60%, you have got to pull them in if you want to command those higher salaries. And I think that the movies, the projects, the different things that Monique has done, they have not pulled in that other segment of the population. And not to mention, you know, her mouth. Because y'all, let's face it, she kicked her own self in the ass when she talked about Oprah. You know those white folks love Oprah. Then she talked about Lee Daniels, Tyler Perry, and she goes on and on doing it. I say shut your mouth, do your work, put your head down, get your work done. Take projects that you might feel are beneath you. Get a whole bunch of projects out there. Build up. Even actresses and actors. Think of Halle Berry back in the day playing a crackhead. Think of that. And movies that she played in where she was less than the Halle Berry that we know now. She took those projects because she needed to get her face out there. And I think that that's what Monique should have done. Again, strike when the fire is hot. When you are in your season, do your thing. Now, let's just talk about this thing with Tiffany Haddish. Like I said, HBO offered her a 2-year deal. She had the success of her role in Girls Trip. She had a New York Times best-selling book called The Black Unicorn. Recently, she had a stand-up special on Showtime. She has several upcoming projects. From what Straight from the A says, she's gonna be starring opposite Tracy Morgan in a movie called The Last OG. She also has another project with Kevin Hart where she's going to be in a movie called Night School. And then after that, she has two more movies that will be coming out: The Kitchen and The Temp. And in one of these roles, she is an executive producer. So what I see with this girl is she's striking and riding the coattails of her success in Girls Trip. She is taking projects that, you know, maybe when we see them, we might say, oh, this movie ain't all that good, but she's getting her face out there. And I think that that's the way to do it. Even to legendary people like Prince and Michael Jackson, they all had to crawl before they walked. Whitney Houston, she was a background singer for several major artists when she was a teenager. She got her name out in the industry. Her mother shopped her around. They didn't just put Whitney Houston out there, blast her out onto the scene. She paid her dues. And not to say that Monique has not, but sometimes you gotta eat a little humble pie and take some shit that you may not necessarily feel is of your caliber. But what those projects do is they keep your face out there. Think of Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart, sometimes when I look at him, even though I think he's funny, I cannot believe that he has surpassed some of the comedians that I actually think are way funnier than Kevin Hart. But what is the difference between those comedians? What is the difference between a Dave Chappelle and say some of the other black comedians that routinely, go around the circuit and do their stand up? A lot of the more successful ones, they have had a crossover appeal. You know, it's sad that you have to have that to be successful, but that is the reality. And I think that when Monique gets that in her head, and when Monique humbles herself a little bit, because y'all, I'm going to tell you, it's like raising your kids, handling your home. And just say you got laid off from a job and it was hard to find another one. Would you keep passing up jobs that are, say, less than what you are used to being paid and keep waiting on a job? Just say you were making $100,000 a year and that was what you were used to, and say that the you had been out of work for a while, you hadn't done anything really, even near what you were making, and then you started getting offered jobs that were 60,000, 50,000, 40,000. Would you just not take them because you had a certain standard? Would you let your life fall apart because that $100,000 job is not coming along? Or would you lower your standards a little bit and take what you can till you can make it back to where you were? And I think that that's what the problem is with Monique. And also, I spoke of a lot of legendary people, say a Gladys Knight, a Diana Ross, say some of our old groups, OJs, Dramatics, Stylistics. You know, they all had a season. Even though we know, say, someone like Gladys Knight could stand in the middle of a stage and tear it down. Her voice can bring tears to your eyes, joy to your heart, and just music to your ears. But she's not commanding what she did when she was back in her season. Sometimes we see some of these big time legendary singers playing smaller arenas. I even saw Gladys Knight singing for, the people that were skating, ice skaters and stuff, on Dancing with the Stars and things like that. You know, they have humbled themselves and taken the work that is being offered to them. And I think that with Monique, maybe her season has passed. And maybe she needs to eat a little humble pie and start taking roles that just keep her out there, keep coins flowing into her pocket. If you have several $500,000 gigs, those coins add up too. And stop worrying about what's in somebody else's pocket. Do you think that I worry about what my neighbor's income is? As long as I can pay my fucking bills, that's all that matters to me. I'm not worried about what's going on with someone else's, coins. I'm worried about mine. And I believe that that is what Monique needs to do. Now, y'all, I would be very interested to know what you think about this thing that, first of all, Straight from the A is doing. I think that's very unfair of them to be pitting two black women against each other. I don't like that. But the story, do you think that Monique needs to take a lower profile for now? And maybe that's not the right words. Maybe the right words is humble herself. Take some projects that are very good work and keep taking those projects. Maybe it's good work, but not a lot of cash. And keep her face out there where the public is seeing her and getting used to her face out there, building her resume again, as she spoke about her resume. Keep adding projects till she builds back up to where she was. Because, like I mentioned in my other video, Monique had two successful shows. She had the Parkers, and she also had her own talk show. She was up there, but I strongly believe that that husband of hers, he has damaged her career in some way. I don't know what it is, but I believe he has a lot to do with why Monique is not where she once was. Let me know what y'all think. Put the comments down in the comments section. I can't wait to read them. You guys have a great day. And as always, thanks for watching my video. Take care now. Bye-bye.